I was shuttled into this place, Danny, that was just the most magnificent place I'd ever seen in my life. So bright and luminous, and it was as if I was looking at the outside world from the perspective of the inside of a diamond. Refracted combinations of light that just bounced off of one another, and there was just this feeling of unconditional love.
Yes, Bubba, thank you so much for giving us a chance to speak to you today. So, Bubba Herrick is a former Division One baseball player at Jacksonville University. You had to undergo a failed elbow surgery that resulted in your heart stopping, which led to a profound near-death experience. So, I don't want to give too much away, so why don't I give you a chance to tell us a little bit about it and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so like you said, I was a Division One baseball player with really no concept of death at all. I was only 19 at the time. Full of pride, full of ego, full of everything that a young athlete is full of. And I had suffered an elbow injury in my freshman year of college, and I didn't think much of it. I was scheduled to get this surgery called Tommy John surgery, which, for those watching who don't know what Tommy John surgery might be, it's a very black and white process. From what I understood at the time, it's actually one of the most common surgeries in all of sports. The success rate of coming back from Tommy John surgery was very, very high. And it's an elbow procedure, if I didn't say that already. So the day before my surgery, I have this meeting with this nurse. She asks me all these questions. And like I said, I'm 19. So I'm kind of just like yesing her along with these questions. And she's like, are you taking any medications? And asking me all, the regular procedural questions. And I'm just like, yeah, yeah, whatever. Let's get through this. And at the end of her list of questions, she asks me, are you allergic to anything that might complicate the surgery, like anesthesia? And as I'm yesing her along, it caught me in my tracks. And I was like, wait a minute. I feel like we should. I've never been under anesthesia before, but I feel like that question's like an important question to know the answer to. So I told her no. And I as I left that day, I just felt this pit in my stomach. I just felt this kind of like anxiousness about the surgery, because that question just felt off. And it was like an intuitive thing. I didn't really think much of it the next day. The day of my surgery comes, and I'm hooked up to, all the machines and the IVs and things that they hook you up to before surgery. And the doctor comes in, and he's got this script that he gives my mom and I. And he says, Bubba, here's how this is gonna work. He says, we're gonna put the anesthesia through your IV. By the time we wheel you from where we are now, which was like this holding pre-operation room, to the operating room, which is on the same floor, so it wasn't a very far trek. He said, when we get there, you're going to be unconscious and under the anesthesia. The surgery is going to last 1 hour. We'll send you back to Tampa when you're done, and we'll get you back on the field as quick as possible. So he dismisses my mom, and my mom's all nervous. So I make sure to tell my mom before we go, Mom, I love you. I'll see you in an hour. I made sure to tell her I will see you in an hour. So he dismisses my mom and puts the anesthesia through my IV, and he wheels me to the operating room, just like he said. And when I got to the operating room, I'm waiting for this anesthesia to hit me, but for whatever reason, I was still awake and fully conscious. But I didn't really know the difference because I never had surgery before. So I was just kind of laying there waiting for this anesthesia to hit me. I just figured it was part of the process. I was like, well, he told me I was going to be unconscious, but by this time, I'm not. And maybe it's okay. Maybe it'll just kind of hit me when it's supposed to. So by this point, they're continuing to get everything ready, their surgical tools, and I'm just laying there with my eyes closed. And I start to get worried because they're confirming with each other that they're ready to operate on me. Um, and as the doctor, inches closer to my elbow with his little tool, um, he pulls back. And in my head at the time, when he pulled back, I was like, wow, okay. He knows I need more anesthesia. Like finally, right? Somebody caught on to this. Um, but that wasn't the case. The heartbeat monitor that had my heartbeat, it's sped up, and it was, beep, 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 until it just had a red flat line on it. And, the next thing I remember, Danny, is I was I was almost on like the second floor of a house. It felt like it was like there was a thick glass panel separating me from from where I was and me on the operating table. And I was just watching my body from above, as my body turned it's like a bruise, kind of like purple, and then a lifeless blue, and then like a corpse like white, and a brown, and the color of a dead man. And I watched myself die on the operating table. And as soon as I watched that happen, I was shuttled into this profound life review. This, for those watching who might not know what a life review is, in my experience, it was like this 360-degree panoramic, almost like a movie playing of my life from start to finish. And what was interesting about my life review was, uh, I wasn't just watching the movie, I was also in the movie. And not only was I in the movie, but I could also experience the movie from everyone else's perspective in the movie. So I guess what I mean by that is there were scenes in my life review where there were multiple people involved, and I could see it from everybody's perspective and experience that moment from everybody's perspective, which was super profound. And I'm sure we'll get into that. But yeah, my life review, I got to see, all the moments of my life that were very memorable. There was a basketball game in my life, with my stepfather, who came into my life at a really pivotal time around 12 years old. And we played this basketball game, and it was just the most beautiful basketball game I'd ever played. My stepdad was much different from my father. My father was, very demanding, and he used to beat us, and he would scream at us, and I was super afraid of my dad. But Mike, my stepdad, he was just the opposite. He was exactly what I needed in a father. He would teach me. He wouldn't scream at us. He was very patient with us. So I got to see moments like that in my life review, just moments that really stuck with me. But Danny, the theme of my life review was, it wasn't exactly positive, and the reason for that was because I also got to see all the moments of my life where I wasn't exactly proud of how I handled myself. And I won't get into too much detail because there's just so much to cover there. But another example is I had a grandfather who was a Vietnam veteran and just a very wise person. And he had all these stories that he used to tell me. And in my life review, there was a memory where my grandpa was sitting next to me on a rocking chair, and I was sitting next to him. And I was a teen, probably like 14 or 15 around the time. And he was sharing these incredible stories from the war with me. And what I was doing instead of listening to him is I was just scrolling on my phone, and I wasn't even paying attention at all. And I also got to see moments of my life where I could have told somebody I love them, or I care about them, or that I was sorry for doing wrong to them, but I didn't. And at the end of my life review, Danny, there's more to that story, of course, but at the end of my life review, I just felt this overwhelming amount of regret and disappointment and anger towards myself for essentially wasting. It felt like I wasted the one life that I was given. And I didn't grow up with any type of faith or anything. I guess you could say I was kind of an atheist before my near death experience. But at the end of my life review, I found myself calling out for God. I was just like, God, please, like I know what I need to fix now. Like I just saw this life review. Please just give me this second chance, because I'll do it right. I don't want to die this. But my heart was stopped. So eventually, after really fighting with myself, I just surrendered, and I called out for God, and eventually I just said, you know what? Like I'm dead. I'm dead now. I'm not. I don't have a heartbeat. So just take me. Just take me wherever I'm going. And as soon as I surrendered, I was shuttled into this place, Danny, that was just the most magnificent place I'd ever seen in my life. It was so bright and luminous, and it was as if I was looking at the outside world from the perspective of the inside of a diamond. This all-encompassing diamond. There were these refracted combinations of light that just bounced off of one another, and there was just this feeling of unconditional love, and timelessness. And it felt like, for whatever reason, I was technically dead, but it just felt like I was so alive in this place, and so aware, and so engaged. And you know, I didn't have any senses. There were no need to have senses, but there was just this inner knowing. And I guess it's really hard to describe, but I just knew everything in this place. And I'm in this place for what feels like an eternity. And then without transition, this strange figure appears in this place. And with without introduction or anything, this strange figure passes me a basketball. And it turns out that the strange figure was Mike, my stepdad, he had passed away when I was 18, just about a year before my near death experience. And Mike and I are recreating in this place the same basketball game that I had just seen in my life review, you know, the one that stuck with me so very deeply. And we're playing this basketball game for what feels like eternity, and it's full of loving competition and just like fun banter. It's just such a fun thing. And then at the end of the game, Mike, his tone changes from, you know, loving and fun to kind of like fatherly and stern. And he basically says to me, "All right, Bubba, let's cut the crap. Like, I know, I know how badly you wanted that second chance after you saw your life review, and I know how much regret you were filled with and disappointment and anger." And he says, "I'm here to offer you a second chance. And if you accept this offer, you have a responsibility to make sure that you live out your great purpose, and that the next time you die, you're going to be ready for it." And he gives me this option, but it doesn't really feel like I have much of a choice. Um, so I reluctantly accepted his offer. Um, and you know, we exchanged "I love yous" and "I'll see you soon." And then the next thing I remember is I was back in that on that second story of that proverbial house, watching my body down below as the team of doctors, you know, shot me with the shot that kind of saved my life. And I woke up on the operating table, and I was just so disoriented that I started swinging punches at the doctors because I was so shocked about what I just experienced.
Thank you for sharing your wonderful story. So, were you able to talk about it to your doctors or to your family members? So, how long did that take before you started to come out of the closet, so to speak?
Sure. Initially, right when I woke up on the table and I was, you know, transferred to like my holding room or whatever at the hospital, I shared the story with my mom right away. And I was sedated on whatever drugs they used to revive me and kind of keep me stable. So I was saying crazy things. You know, I was saying I wanted to be buff like The Rock when I came back from baseball. I was just saying silly things, you know. Um, but I recalled the story to my mom initially, just like I recalled it to you and just like it's written in my book. But you know, she was like, "No, that's just the drugs talking." And like I said, I didn't grow up believing in stuff like that, so naturally she shut it down. Um, so I shut it down. I was like, "Yeah, she's probably right. It's just the drugs." So it took me about 3.5, 3, 4 years to finally, you know, admit to myself that this was a deeply impactful experience that actually happened to me, and that I need to share it and talk about it and kind of embrace it rather than run away from it.
What's interesting about your story is that, so you said, although it felt as if you were given a choice, it almost seems as if that choice was already made. I'm just curious to know, so where does free will come into play?
Danny, I have had that conversation with myself so many times because it seems like such a paradox, right? Like I was given a choice, but at the same time, it didn't feel like I had a choice. So I've kind of wrestled with myself about that free will conversation since my experience because I don't know. I really don't. And even today, as I sit here and speak to you, I'm still kind of on the fence about whether I believe in free will or not because it it feels like fate has guided this whole thing. Yeah, I can say that with confidence. It feels like I've had very little control over most of this.
No, that makes sense. If I understand correctly, so you're no longer a baseball player. So yeah, so what made you change your career?
Yeah, so right after that happened, I eventually did get the surgery that I was scheduled to get, not that same day, but about a month and a half later. and I kept dealing with some injuries. And by the time I got back onto the field, my heart just wasn't in it. You know, my soul was calling out for something else, which was hard for me because my whole life, my only dream was to become a major league baseball player. And, I was well on my way to do that, but my heart just wasn't in it. So when I did take the field again, I was full of fear when I was performing, and I didn't love it the same. And so eventually I decided to retire and pursue, for whatever reason, while I was playing, I started journaling, and journaling gave me more fulfillment than playing did. So at that time, while I was still playing, I decided I'm gonna become an author. Like, I want to become an author. I want to become a writer and a creator. So my heart was more in that than baseball.
I was wondering if you had any words of encouragement for those that perhaps are still in the dream, that feel that perhaps there's something off, but they're not quite able to let it go.
Yeah, my words of encouragement would be, it takes a lot of courage to kind of, number one, admit that to yourself, and then take action on that feeling, on that intuition that what you're pursuing might not be what you want. I would say, if anybody watching this feels like they need to make a change, or that their heart or soul is calling out for something else, definitely pursue that, because I think that is a message from God saying, "Hey, your time in this specific profession or career or whatever it might be, you've got what you needed to learn from that, and you need to go learn new things." So I would encourage people to take that risk and take that leap of faith, because I think on the other side of that is a lot of growth.
Yeah. Although you might not be able to see it right away. So also, I know you created a systematic framework to prepare for death by truly living. A system that's composed of four core concepts. I know that you have a book coming out, which we'll link in the description below. But I was hoping perhaps to be able to give us like a summarized version of these concepts.
Yeah. So the concept, it was created out of the title of my book, which was Becoming Ready to Die. And basically, what the North Star of the concept is living a life in flow state. And for those who might not know what flow state is the most optimal state of human consciousness. Think of those moments where, your attention is wrapped only in the present moment, where everything outside of right now doesn't exist. And, it might be a concert with friends, or it might be, in my case, on the mound as a pitcher, or in your case, maybe even a guitar riff, or anything that brings your attention to the now. So I've created this flow state framework that I use in my coaching and in my teaching, that includes four pillars, that addressing each pillar will eventually lead to a life full of flow state. And the first pillar is faith. In order to live a life worth dying for, a life worth living, um, preparing for death as well, I believe you must be able to surrender to something greater than yourself and admit that you're not in control, because in order to enter flow state on a consistent basis, you have to be able to let go. And without a deep faith in something greater than yourself, it's really hard to do that. So that's the first pillar, it's faith. The second pillar is developing a relationship to practice. I think being, quote, ready to die as a finite state of being, is a myth. I don't think we ever, quote, get there. But I will say that developing a relationship to practice allows us to commit ourselves to the process of evolving our soul, to the process of entering flow state on a consistent basis. And also recognizing that there is no such thing as having it. Like, I can't be ready to die right now, because tomorrow I can be more ready to die than I am right now. So it's kind of a paradox, I guess, in that sense. In order to enter flow state, we must be living, not in a state of fear. So in my opinion, we must be able to address what's in the way of our ability to enter flow state, which is trauma, which is, nervous system breakdowns, which is, whatever maybe our habits that might keep us in fear, scrolling social media, or doing something that might keep us living in a state of fear. That's the opposite of being ready to die, in my opinion. So, in my work, I definitely like to help people address what's in the way. Some of that can even be limiting beliefs, or anything really, whatever's in the way I believe we must get it out of the way to enter flow state on a consistent basis. And then the last pillar is, how do we do all of that? I think the medium by which we do all of that is through creative self-expression and play. So I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, in my work, I prescribe play, and self-expression, storytelling, these mediums by which you enter flow state on a consistent basis, but you also process trauma and you also develop a relationship to practice all at the same time, because you must show up to play, you must show up to journal, you must show up to dance, and all of those things give us more quote repetitions in feeling free, and eventually that just becomes a way of being in the world, which is being ready to die on a consistent basis. So those are the four pillars. I know it's kind of a long explanation, but that's what I feel like my life's work is.
No, that's brilliant. I don't know if you know, but Tibetan monks, they see this life as a preparation for the moment of death. So for them, the moment of death is the most precious that we have. So we should be the most lucid, the most aware, and they see literally this whole life just in preparation for the one moment. So yeah, I can see that you picked,
Great.
without perhaps even knowing, you picked the right inspiration from them. So now there, okay. So the next question is probably a little obvious by now, but are you afraid of death these days?
No, I'm even on the fence, Danny, of whether I believe in death or not. Meaning, I don't even think death is real in some sense. I mean, it is obviously our heart stops and our nervous system shuts off, but I think death is more of a concept rather than an experience. I think it's more of a continuation of consciousness rather than a cessation of existence.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think in 2025 we should probably revisit the idea that we have about death, because it's the age, it's
Yeah.
the transition, is the way I see it. This body is the car that we drive. Consciousness is the driver. Maybe the mind is the GPS, which is pre-programmed and it never shuts up, right? And when the car, reaches its expiry date, we just, send it to the junkyard, and that's it. We move to the next car, and the driver comes out and moves on. So that's kind of the way I see it these days. Wondering also, is there anything you would recommend to non-believers to perhaps try and come to terms with the notion of an afterlife?
I think that what you believe happens after life is how you experience your everyday life. I really believe that the two are one and the same. So I would just encourage those who might be on the fence about an afterlife. That seems like a very limiting belief in some sense. I think that that might limit your everyday experience. What if you believed that death didn't exist? I mean, I think on the other side of that belief is freedom.
That's great. What would you say is the biggest lesson that you learned from your NDE?
Yeah, that's a tough question too, Danny. That's a deep one. The biggest lesson, I think the biggest lesson I've learned from that, there are a couple, but I'll kind of try and summarize them as quick as I can. The first is that love is the most important thing. I think before my experience, I took life and work specifically. I took work very seriously, and I was so dedicated to being the best at my craft in baseball. And I missed out on so many relationships and so many experiences because I was taking life too seriously. So I guess love being the most important thing in life goes hand in hand with what I'm doing now on the other side of that. Because of what I learned, is I'm just trying not to take life too seriously. I think that there's a time and a place, and I think, in my specific case, I think being ambitious is great, and pursuing your calling is great, but I think it's important to just have fun too, because we are here for just a little bit of time, and that childlike wonder is it's so easy to get lost in responsibilities and the everyday grind of life. But yeah, I think what I've learned the most is that love is the most important thing, and that it's important not to take things too seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any other after effects that you've encountered in the way that you go through this human experience?
Yeah, and you know, some of them came about, the after effects. Some of them came about without me even realizing it. It was almost as if they just happened by themselves. But um, the main after effect that I've experienced recently is I've become very, very sensitive to energy. Like, my intuition seems to be heightened after my experience. And I think I was always pretty intuitive and sensitive to energy as a kid. I just maybe wasn't as aware of it as I am now. Um, I wouldn't say I have any, spiritual gifts or anything like that on the other side of this experience. And if I do, I probably wouldn't call them spiritual gifts. Um, but definitely my sensitivity has been heightened. And I think on the other side of the grievance process that has come with this experience, because it was a long time where I was just super lost after this experience. Now that I'm on the other side of that, I think what I've noticed is that I'm just a little bit more joyful and grateful for everything, even the stuff that might seem bad. I think that I have an easier time handling that stuff now.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a great ability to have, because life can get tough. That's
Sure.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're curious to know what's your idea of God these days?
That's something I'm still kind of wrestling with. Um, it's tough because there's so many different ways of looking at it. And, I think what I do believe, what I know that I believe is that God is in pursuit of us as much as we are in pursuit of God. God loves and wants the best for us just as much as we want and love God. So I know that to be true. As far as who or what God is or what God might represent, um, I'm still trying to figure that out.
We're curious to know why do you think God made us in the first place?
That's another deep question. I don't know. Why did God make us? Um, I don't know why God made us, but what I will say is I think we're here to learn. Um, I think we were maybe put here to, and this is just my own theory and personal opinion, but I think we were put here to learn and to love and to experience what being a human being is like because almost similar to what you said earlier about the Tibetan monks. I think that whatever we're meant to learn here is going to prepare us for what we experience after this life. So I don't know exactly what we were created for, but I believe that we're here to, the reason we're here is to learn for sure.
That's great. But I was also wondering if you feel that perhaps we are entering a new era, that we are seeing a shift from a material to a more spiritual society. And this could be the consequence of, the advent of the field of near-death studies and many of the other fields which have really popped up in the last few decades.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting hypothesis and or theory rather. And I would agree. I think that there's something about where we're at in this specific period of time that feels encouraging, in my opinion. It feels like things are moving towards higher levels of consciousness. And, I think that in some sense, when you do level up in consciousness, there's obviously resistance that ought to be addressed. And I think that, we might have to endure some tough times together to level up that collective consciousness. But I do feel that there is a spiritual revolution happening, at least here in the States. I haven't been outside of the States, but it feels like um, here, everyone that I come across is asking themselves deeper questions. And every time I talk to somebody who might have a different belief than me, I think they're more open to having those discussions now, which is a sign of spiritual maturity, in my opinion. So I would definitely say so. I'd be curious to ask you what you see. I mean, because I know you don't live here in the States. Like, do you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, I would say maybe the States, they're a little ahead of us, maybe a couple of decades or so. But I'm very hopeful what the next decades are going to bring. But that's brilliant. It's such a lovely conversation. I don't know if there's any party messages that you would like to leave the audience with today.
Yeah, I mean, I would just encourage everybody to. I don't know. I think we're at a time right now where things might feel um, just difficult. I mean, I know in my own life right now, things are speeding up on me at times, and things are hard to manage and kind of chaotic. And I don't know, maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, but if I'm speaking for anybody else, I would just encourage everybody to love really hard. I mean, I went in for that surgery, and I told my mom, "I love you. I'll see you in an hour." And 15 minutes later, I was dead. And I had no clue that that would happen. that wasn't even on my radar going into that surgery. So I'd say if you're anything like me and your life is speeding up and you're experiencing chaos and trying to keep it all together, I'd say lean into your relationships and just focus on what you have and be grateful for that and trust God and have faith because I do believe that no matter what, um, like I said earlier, the universe wants us to thrive, and I believe that if we believe that the universe wants us to thrive and we do lean into our relationships and love on the people around us, that we will.
Wow, such a great advice. Thank you so much again. It's been a true pleasure. Wish you all the best. Keep up the good work. And yes, bye for now.
Thanks, Danny. Thank you so much.
Hi there. Well, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the IANDS community, please leave a like, subscribe, and maybe share with the ones you love. New episodes are out each Friday. Until then, enjoy the stream we all call life and live the love you wish to see in the world. Bye for now.